Former Attorney General Michael Mukasey.
Thank you, Frank. I want to thank Frank Gaffney and the Center for Security Policy for having both the energy and the courage to organize this event, which is entitled briefly a Defeat Jihad Summit. Now, there may be some of you who are used to this town and who've been listening to the rhetoric in this town for the last several years who may be confused about the name of this event. So I will tell you that in current Washington speak, it may be thought of as the meeting to oppose man-caused disasters, workplace violence, and other random events having nothing to do with Islam. In fact, of course, this meeting is meant to stand for precisely the opposite of the woolly-headed and mush-mouthed thinking that gave us expressions like those and phrases like those. Here, Frank, as you've just heard, and others you're going to hear from, are very much in the tradition, not of the current mode of expression here, but in the tradition of George Orwell, who wrote a splendid essay that I recommend actually to all people who are watching this and listening to it, an essay called Politics in the English Language that he wrote in the late 40s. His thesis was that there's an intimate connection between politics and language, and that when a speaker resorts to abstract and indefinite phrases, that usually means that the speaker is trying to conceal from the public, or possibly even from himself, what he is doing and what he is saying. And I'll tell you in the privacy of this room that the left actually has no monopoly on this practice. In fact, the administration in which I served applied certain harsh but lawful methods to get information from captured terrorists, but then instead of calling them harsh or coercive techniques and facing up to a reality that was unpleasant but within the law, they called them enhanced interrogation techniques, which looks and sounds as if it were a verbal flinch away from something illegal. It wasn't. And the phrase enhanced interrogation techniques, which made it sound like you're trying to sell a wash day product by the enhanced product, did nothing to contribute to the clarity of either the analysis or the discussion. Today, of course, it's the Obama administration that's using fuzzy language to try to divert the public away from a stark reality, which is that the violence that's being perpetrated in the name of Islam and the stealth cultural attack that's being pressed to advance the goals of Islam, which include imposing Sharia, a repressive and misogynistic doctrine, both have a basis in Islam, and that until Muslims figure out how to deal with that in a way that allows them to live in peace and tolerance with the rest of us are going to have to take whatever measures we can, including both clear thinking and force when necessary, to fight back. The problem isn't simply the few thousand or even the tens of thousands of fighters who adhere to ISIS, or the many more who subscribe to the motto of the Muslim Brotherhood: Allah is our objective, the Prophet is our leader, the Quran is our law, jihad is our way, and dying in the way of Allah is our highest hope. That's not the problem. The problem is that the acts of ISIS, the beheadings, the burnings, the words and violent images of the Muslim Brotherhood, and the cultural campaign against Western values lay claim to religious authority stemming from passages in the Quran that speak of smiting the necks of unbelievers or achieving the supremacy of Islam and the like, and are regarded as fit for public consumption and as a normal part of everyday conversation in many parts of the Muslim world. Videos of the burning of the Jordanian pilot were shown in public on large screens in areas controlled by ISIS and were greeted not with averted eyes, but with shouts of, "God is great." Salafi Muslims rallied in Gaza in support of the Paris attack, warned worshippers of the cross, as they put it, to expect more attacks, and said, our Sheikh al-Baghdadi has armies that drink blood and are entertained by body parts. Those were the phrases used at the rally. At the Al-Aqsa Mosque in Jerusalem, a cleric preached a sermon supporting the Paris attacks, as did a Saudi imam in Jeddah, who told his audience that this is the only language Jewish and Christian infidels understand. In Turkey, members of the Muslim Brotherhood called on television for the killing of Egyptian officials, including President al-Sisi, in a broadcast that was aimed at Egypt, and urged foreigners to leave Egypt. A Turkish official who was questioned about the propriety of such a broadcast said that the Muslim Brotherhood members were simply exercising their rights to free expression under Turkish law. Even in India, in Hyderabad, a Muslim cleric led a funeral service for the Charlie Hebdo attackers and justified their conduct by precedent from the life of Muhammad himself. The problem here is not simply the statements and sermons and rallies, but rather that they are accepted by those in the immediate audience and by those outside the immediate audience as perfectly normal. The small change of daily discourse. That's not to say that there are not other voices. There are. Let's start with President al-Sisi of Egypt himself, who has put a target on his back by cracking down on the Muslim Brotherhood, by going to Al-Azhar University in Cairo, which is the authoritative seat of Sunni learning that dates back to the 10th century, and you'll recall was the venue for our president's declaration that he was going to reach out to the Muslim world and that no longer would we seek to dominate. And telling an audience, as President al-Sisi did, of Sunni clerics, we have to reform our religion. Al-Sisi's not alone. Saudi newspapers published in Great Britain have carried articles sharply critical of the strain of violence in Islam. One Saudi columnist wrote that non-Muslim societies and countries are busy with their affairs and scientific discoveries, which serve all mankind, including Muslims, while Muslims are busy killing each other. Now the question is, what are we doing to support the struggles of people like that and to defend ourselves against those who preach the message of ISIS and of the Muslim Brotherhood and those who would impose Sharia law? We're not doing very much. Perversely, the Justice Department allows a Muslim Brotherhood affiliate to review the training materials used by law enforcement and to take out any references to militant Islam. And as you heard, the State Department last week hosted a delegation of Egyptian Muslim Brotherhood leaders, the Muslim Brotherhood, of course, being banned in Egypt, including one who posed giving the Muslim Brotherhood salute. Even the Defense Department does its part. The chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, General Martin Dempsey, announced that in the coming academic year, the National Defense University will host an essay contest honoring the late Saudi King Abdullah. That kind of conduct can result only from a frame of mind that refuses to focus on reality and deals instead in fantasy. And it's a circular process. As Orwell pointed out in his essay, it's kind of like the behavior of a man who drinks because he thinks he's a failure and then fails all the more miserably because he drinks. So people start out by refusing to face reality and become all the more unable to deal with it because they have refused to face it. The goal of this conference is to break that cycle, to look reality in the face, to call things by their proper name, to assess what we are actually doing, point out what we should be doing, to figure out what we have to do to make our situation better, and to recall who we are, and to protect our way of life. Proponents of what is fashionably called soft power, who like to present it as a more intelligent alternative to hard power, often cite the truism that we can't kill our way out of our difficulties. Like any other truism, that one is true. But that's not to say that we should not recognize that we have adversaries who believe that they can and should kill their way out of their difficulties, out of this world and into the next, and that we should be the people they kill. Adversaries who can point to religious authority to support that view. We have to recognize that and act accordingly. We also have to recognize that alongside the violence and in its wake is a cultural campaign to impose Sharia law on as broad a swath of the world as possible. Initially, and at least on those parts of the world that were at any time under Muslim rule, including Spain and elsewhere in Europe, and gradually expanding to include the entire globe. That campaign includes as one of its tenets the use of deception. There's even a name for it, taqiyya. It's been said that we cannot solve the problems of Islam, that only the Muslim world can do that. And that is literally true as well. That's one of the things that the First Amendment to our Constitution means is that our government can't go around picking winners and losers in theological disputes. Fair enough. Although we should also recall that one of Douglas MacArthur's great achievements was that at the direction of President Truman, he made certain to change how the Shinto religion was practiced in Japan before he left and the occupation ended. But saying that our government has to tread carefully in matters of religion is not the same as saying that you have to permit people who are the enemies of your way of life to decide what you can do and what you can say, or that it's wise to enhance the credibility of those people and their stature within the Muslim world, particularly within the Muslim world in America, in the United States, by welcoming them to the halls and councils of government, or that you should not do all that you can to strengthen the hand of people who are in fact your friends. It takes a clear mind and a clear vocabulary to do that. It's that kind of clarity that I think we're going to get today, and not a moment too soon. And for that, again, I'm grateful to Frank Gaffney for this conference, to all the participants, and to all of you for attending. Thank you very much.
General Mukasey, thank you very much. And